Welcome to the dairies of science fiction, where extraordinary stories come to life. Enjoy the journey. The station had been dying long before she arrived. It wheezed through its last operational cycles like an old animal refusing to lie down, lights flickering in a rhythmic protest, gravity hiccuping just enough to make every tool roll slightly out of reach. The engineer was alone, which suited him. Machines rarely lied, and when they did, they at least did so consistently. He was halfway inside an open maintenance panel, arguing quietly with a coolant valve that refused to cooperate, when the proximity alarm screamed as if it had discovered religion. He banged his head, swore creatively, and floated backward just in time to see a body crash through the emergency airlock in a tumble of sparks and failing shields. The alarm switched from panic to accusation as though blaming him personally. The body hit the deck, slid a meter, and stopped. She was very blue, not metaphorically. Properly, undeniably blue, like the memory of a clear sky misremembered by someone who had never been planetside. Her armor was scorched and split, smoking in small, offended wisps, and her long ears, too long to be human, too graceful to be anything else, lay flat against the floor. The engineer stared, took a slow breath, and said, "Okay, this is new." His first instinct was to check if she was armed. His second was to check if she was leaking anything that might melt the station faster than it was already melting itself. Satisfied on both counts, he dragged her toward the med alcove, muttering apologies to no one in particular. The station lights dimmed as if disapproving of the effort. Up close, she looked less like a warrior of legend and more like someone who had lost an argument with physics. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and her skin bore strange glowing marks that pulsed faintly, as if her body were quietly negotiating with reality. The medical scanner protested the moment he activated it, throwing up error symbols and a message that translated roughly to "We have no idea what this is." "Same," he told it. He worked with what he had: sealant foam, biostitch threads meant for human tissue, and a stubborn refusal to let strangers die on his floor. Every few seconds, the station shuddered, and he cracked jokes at it to stay calm. He told the machine it was doing its best. He told the unconscious blue woman that she'd picked a terrible place to collapse. He told himself that when this was over, he was taking a long leave somewhere without alarms. When the bleeding slowed and her breathing steadied, relief crept in like a shy thing. He leaned back, exhausted, and only then noticed the faint insignia burned into her armor, an unfamiliar symbol that made the scanner briefly reboot itself in what might have been reverence. He missed that. Instead, he focused on the small miracle in front of him: a life pulled back from the edge by luck, duct tape, and an engineer who never learned when to stop fixing things. As the station settled into an uneasy quiet, he failed to notice that far beyond the cracked hull and flickering stars, entire fleets were already changing course. Consciousness returned to her reluctantly, as if it had better places to be. The first thing she registered was sound: a low mechanical hum, punctuated by someone humming off-key to it, as though trying to establish dominance through music. The second was pain, controlled, distant, negotiated into tolerable silence. She opened her eyes and immediately closed them again. "Good," a voice said. "That's usually the part where people wake up, or bite. You didn't bite, so we're already ahead of schedule." She tried again, slower this time. The ceiling above her was cracked, patched, and blinking at irregular intervals. The engineer was sitting nearby, spinning a diagnostic tool between his fingers like it was a coin, and he was losing an argument with probability. When he noticed her watching him, he smiled with the cautious optimism of a man who had met armed strangers before and survived by being polite. "You're alive," he said, "which is excellent news for both of us. Mostly you." She shifted, testing her limbs, then stopped when he raised a finger. "Careful. I patched you together using equipment designed for humans and optimism. Both have limits." Her voice, when she spoke, surprised them both. "You talk too much." He brightened. "That's also excellent news. It means your brain is working and judgment is intact. She studied him in silence, calculating. The station felt wrong, too small, too broken, too honest. She had awakened in palaces and command chambers before, always surrounded by fear disguised as loyalty. This man looked afraid in a straightforward way, like someone worried about breaking a favorite tool. "You saved me," she said. "Technically," he replied, "I delayed your death until someone more qualified could take credit, or until you woke up and yelled at me. Either way." She almost smiled, almost. As she sat up, the station chose that moment to lurch. The lights dimmed, flared, then stabilized with a sulky buzz. The engineer didn't even look up. "Ignore that. She does that when she's tired." "You named the station," she said. "I work alone," he answered. "I had to talk to something." She swung her legs over the edge of the med platform, wincing. "You should not have interfered." "People keep saying that," he said. "So far, no one's offered a better alternative." A long pause stretched between them, filled with distant metallic creaks and the faint whisper of stars beyond thin walls. She chose her next words carefully, layering lies so thin they almost resembled truth. "I am a soldier," she said, "nothing more." He nodded as if she'd said she was an accountant. "Great, I'm an engineer. We're both underpaid and bleeding. Want water." She looked at him then, really looked. And for the first time since her ship had fallen apart around her, something unfamiliar settled in her chest. Not relief, not fear, confusion. Outside the station, unseen sensors woke quietly from centuries-old sleep, whispering her survival across distances that bent space itself. Inside, she accepted the water from his hand and wondered, not for the first time in her long life, what it would be like to remain unnoticed just a little longer. Recovery, she discovered, was an exercise in patience and irritation. Her body obeyed her again mostly, but it did so with commentary, sharp aches, faint pulses of light beneath her blue skin, reminders that survival had come at a cost. The engineer insisted on calling it progress every time she managed to stand without swearing. She insisted on calling it temporary tolerance. They settled into an uneasy routine. He fixed the station. She pretended not to know exactly how broken it was. He brought her food synthesized into questionable shapes. She ate it with the solemn expression of someone honoring a fallen comrade. When he asked if her people preferred a different nutrient balance, she replied that her people preferred not to be poisoned, which he took as encouragement. The galaxy crept closer in subtle ways. Long-range channels crackled to life on their own, broadcasting fragments of urgent messages before collapsing into static. Patrol drones drifted too near the station, then veered away as if reconsidering their life choices. The engineer noticed these things and filed them away under strange but probably fine. "You have enemies," he said one cycle, watching a sensor display flicker. "Everyone does," she replied. "Yeah, but most people don't have enemies with stealth cruisers and bad manners." She shrugged carefully. "I make an impression." He laughed, and for reasons she couldn't explain. That sound stayed with her longer than the pain. She spent hours watching him work, fascinated by the way he spoke to machines as if they were stubborn friends. He scolded conduits, praised relays, and once apologized to a door for kicking it. When she asked why, he said, "Because if I don't, it jams later out of spite." Despite herself, she found the logic comforting. One cycle, an assassin finally made it aboard. It was fast, precise, and very certain of success, until it slipped on leaked coolant and crashed headfirst into a storage crate labeled "Do Not Stack." The engineer stared at the unconscious intruder, then at her. "Is this related to you?" he asked. She considered lying. Instead, she said yes. "Okay," he said. "That's inconvenient but manageable." He sealed the airlock, dumped the would-be killer into an escape pod, and launched it with a note attached that read, "Wrong address. Please reconsider career choices." She watched him do all this without panic, without anger, and felt something shift. For centuries, people had reacted to her existence with fear or devotion. This man reacted with problem-solving and sarcasm. Later, as the station drifted through a quiet pocket of space, she spoke softly. "If you knew who I was, you would not be so calm." He didn't look up from the panel he was repairing. "If I knew who you were, I'd probably still ask if you wanted more water." She closed her eyes, long ears twitching faintly. Somewhere far away, fleets adjusted their trajectories again, growing impatient. She stayed seated beside him, blue hands folded, choosing silence over revelation, and wondering how long the galaxy could wait. The station stopped pretending nothing was wrong the moment the first fleet shadow brushed its sensor range. Consoles lit up in nervous colors, projecting threat estimates that the engineer muted out of habit. "If it starts yelling," he said, "it panics. Then I panic. Bad cycle." She felt it before the alarms, a pressure behind her thoughts, like a door being politely but firmly knocked on by the universe. She straightened, long ears lifting despite herself, then forced them down again. Old habits were dangerous things. "Traffic?" she asked lightly. "Depends on your definition," he replied. "If you consider 17 unidentified warships traffic, then yes. If you consider it an invasion, then also yes." She winced. "They found me sooner than expected." He paused, finally turning to look at her fully. "That sentence is doing a lot of work." Before she could answer, a transmission forced its way through the station's shields, bypassing protocols so old they had ceremonial names. The voice that filled the air was calm, layered, and unmistakably reverent. "Your Radiance," it said. "The galaxy awaits your return." The engineer stared at the console, then at her, then back at the console. "Huh," he said. "So, soldier, huh?" She stood slowly, the air around her seeming to recognize her posture, responding with subtle shifts in gravity. "I did not lie," she said. "I simply condensed." He laughed once, sharp and incredulous. "You're telling me I patched up the person those ships are bowing to?" "Yes." "Out of sealant foam?" "Yes." He rubbed his face. "I'm never fixing anyone again." Outside, the fleet held position, engines burning in disciplined silence. Inside, the station creaked, unimpressed by power displays. She waited for anger, fear, awe, anything. Instead, he gestured at a flickering panel. "Sit," he said. "You're still healing." "I command." "You command the galaxy," he interrupted. "Right now, I command the mid-bay." She hesitated, then obeyed, sitting down with a soft exhale. Something in her expression shifted, tension easing into something dangerously close to relief. "They expect me to return," she said quietly. "To resume control. Wars pause when I speak. Empires listen." "And what do you want?" he asked. She looked at her hands, blue skin glowing faintly in the low light. "I want 5 minutes without someone kneeling." He nodded as if she'd asked for tea. "We can do 5, maybe 10 if the station doesn't explode." The transmission repeated, more insistent now. She reached out, touched the console, and silenced it with a gesture so precise it felt like punctuation. The galaxy waited. She leaned back, long ears brushing the wall, and smiled faintly. "You are not afraid of me." He shrugged. "You still bleed, that helps." Outside, commanders whispered, confused by the delay. Inside, the ruler of everything sat in a broken station, sharing quiet jokes with an engineer who had accidentally saved her life, and without realizing it, begun to change the balance of the stars. The galaxy, it turned out, was very bad at waiting. By the 3rd minute, new transmissions stacked on top of each other like impatient messages from people who believed urgency was a personality. The engineer muted them all with a practiced flick of his wrist, then winced as the station responded by dimming the lights in protest. "Great," he said. "Now it's sulking." She watched the fleet indicators hover at the edge of the display, immaculate formations of impossible scale, each ship carrying enough firepower to rewrite history badly. "They will not attack without my command," she said. "That's comforting," he replied, in a very abstract, potentially temporary way. He handed her a small diagnostic patch, the kind meant to monitor healing tissue. It blinked uncertainly against her blue skin, then adjusted its parameters with what looked suspiciously like enthusiasm. "This will tell me if you overdo it," he said, "which you will." "I have survived supernovas," she said. "Yes, but have you survived my medical advice?" He countered. Despite herself, she laughed, a soft sound that seemed to surprise even her. The weight in the room shifted again, lighter now, as if the station approved. The fleets outside began maneuvering, not aggressively, but nervously, commanders recalculating strategy without instructions. Power struggled to reassert itself through distance and protocol. She felt it tugging at her, the old familiar pull of command, of certainty. With a thought, she could end conflicts on 3 fronts. With a word, she could unmake entire dynasties. Instead, she stayed seated. "I built the system that lets them find me," she said quietly. "Long ago, I believed transparency would prevent war." "And?" he asked, adjusting a stabilizer coil that was definitely not designed to hum. "And it taught my enemies where to aim." He nodded. "Yeah, that tracks. Every time I label a cable, it breaks first." They worked side by side for a while, the ruler of the galaxy handing tools to an engineer who refused to kneel. When another transmission broke through, this one sharper, edged with threat, she finally stood. Her presence changed the air. The station's gravity aligned itself, subtle fields snapping into coherence. She activated a projection, her image blooming across the void outside, vast and unmistakable. "Stand down," she said calmly. "All of you." The fleets froze. Then she added after a pause, "I will return when I am ready." Silence followed, heavy and stunned. She shut the projection off and immediately wobbled. The engineer caught her without ceremony. "See," he said, "overdid it." She leaned against him briefly, steadying herself. "They obeyed." "Of course they did," he said. "You sounded very convincing. Next time, maybe sit while doing galaxy-level announcements." She smiled, tired but genuine. Outside, the fleets powered down, retreating just far enough to give her space. Inside the station, alarms quieted, satisfied for the moment. For the first time in centuries, the ruler of the galaxy delayed a decision, not because she couldn't choose, but because she wanted to see what happened next. The delay did not sit well with the galaxy's more ambitious elements. Within hours, the station's sensors, recently upgraded with parts that had absolutely not been meant to work together, began detecting anomalies. Small ones at first. Probes that pretended to be debris. Signals disguised as background radiation but humming with intent. The engineer squinted at the readouts and sighed. "Someone is definitely trying something clever," he said. "Which usually means it's going to be very stupid." She leaned closer, long ears angling toward the display as if it might whisper secrets. "They think uncertainty makes me weak." "Common mistake," he replied. "Uncertainty just makes people creative, or reckless, sometimes both." The first strike wasn't a strike at all. It was a legal maneuver, transmitted across subspace. An ancient clause invoking emergency succession, wrapped in enough tradition to choke a star. The station systems translated it twice just to be sure. "They are challenging your authority," he said. She nodded calmly. "Yes," politely. "Should I be worried?" "Only if they win." A second signal followed, far less polite. Space around the station folded awkwardly as a covert task force slipped through, ships painted in null fields that drank light. The engineer stared at the display, then tapped it. "I hate ships that don't respect physics." She closed her eyes briefly, reaching outward, her consciousness brushing ancient networks woven through the galaxy itself. Defense grids stirred. Relays aligned. Power answered her call like a held breath finally released. Then she stopped. "No," she said. The engineer looked at her. "No as in I have a better idea, or no as in we're all about to die." "The first," she said, "probably." Instead of summoning fleets, she rerouted control, temporarily, through the station. The lights flared, the walls vibrating as systems never meant to host galactic command suddenly found themselves promoted far beyond their pay grade. Alarms went wild, The engineer grinned. "Oh, I know this feeling. This is what happens right before something works." The attacking ships hesitated, confused as local space bent in unfamiliar ways. Their weapons failed to lock, targeting loops chasing ghosts. She spoke again, her voice carried not by projection but by presence itself. "This station is under my protection," she said, "and his." "Wait," the engineer said. "I'm in the speech now." "Yes. Cool, just checking." The task force retreated in disarray, their command protocols unraveling under a rewrite so elegant it bordered on mockery. When it was over, the station sagged, exhausted but intact. She exhaled slowly. That should discourage them. "For how long?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Long enough." He wiped grease from his hands and leaned back against the console. "You realize you just routed the galaxy through my workplace?" "Yes. I have a break room problem." She laughed, truly laughed this time, and the sound echoed softly through the station. Power, she realized, did not have to be loud to be absolute. And beside her, the engineer, still standing, still joking, proved that sometimes the strongest alliances were formed not in halls of power, but in broken places that refused to stop working. The galaxy adjusted slowly, like a massive organism waking from a long-held breath. Power structures realigned, emergency laws dissolved, and fleets returned to their assigned orbits with visible relief. The station, improbably, became the quiet center of it all, its patched hull now hosting transmissions that once demanded marble halls and ceremonial light. She stood before the final council link, blue skin luminous against the dim interior, long ears relaxed rather than alert. The rulers and commanders watching her waited for absolutes. They always did. "I will no longer rule from shadow or solitude," she said, "nor will I rule alone." Murmurs rippled across the network. Some faces tightened. Others smiled, cautiously hopeful. She continued, laying out reforms that redistributed power, dismantled inherited tyranny, and bound military force to collective consent. The ancient system that had made her indispensable was gently, deliberately dismantled by her own hand. When the transmission ended, silence filled the station. Then the engineer cleared his throat. "So," he said, "does this mean fewer assassination attempts?" "Yes," she replied, "ideally none." "I'll take ideally," he said. "It's an upgrade." The fleets departed for the last time, without waiting for orders. The galaxy, now governed rather than commanded, moved forward on momentum and trust. Loose ends tied themselves off quietly. The assassins recalled, the challengers disarmed by law instead of force, the emergency clauses rendered obsolete. Days passed, the station grew quieter, repairs finished themselves. One cycle she found him recalibrating a console that no longer needed fixing. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know," he replied. "But someone should keep an eye on this place. It's been through a lot." She studied him, this man who had faced gods and armadas with the same mild irritation he reserved for faulty wiring. "You changed," she said. He shrugged. "I used to fix things because they were broken. Now I fix them because they matter." She smiled. She had changed too. Power no longer felt like a burden chained to her identity. It was a choice, one she could set down. When she left the station, it was not with ceremony. Just a quiet departure. He watched from the airlock, hands in his pockets. "Try not to save any more rulers," she said. "No promises," he replied. Stars stretched as her ship vanished into hyperspace, not toward a throne, but toward a future shaped by balance rather than control. The engineer turned back to his workbench, humming badly, smiling to himself. The galaxy endured, and somewhere within it, a ruler learned how to live, and a simple engineer learned that sometimes, fixing one life was enough to change everything.